broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network.
Welcome to episode 134 of Gun Guy Radio. This is a podcast that shines a positive light on the firearms lifestyle. I'm your host, Jake Challand, and this is your weekly dose of positive firearms talk without the politics. Just a few announcements before we get going this week. Thanks again for joining me. And so attention, Chicagoland listeners, there's a bullpup shoot in Waterman, Illinois on September 27th. So bullpup shoot, and there's going to be a zombie shoot where it looks like you can bring your own guns. So, this is a half an hour to an hour outside of the Chicago suburbs. So, really would like to meet you, shake your hand, Chicagoland listeners. We're going to have a Firearms Radio Network booth with probably nothing in it, but pick up some stickers at least, and also get to shoot some bullpups. Yeah, so bullpupshoot.com for more info. And also, Jack Templin and Carol of Fat to Fit are doing another Tough Mudder, and you can join them October 4th in Dallas, Texas. So that's coming up really quick here. October 4th, Dallas, Texas, Fat to Fit HQ, Gun Runners, Tough Mudder. So sign up now. If you like the show, please consider supporting us through Patreon, gunguyradio.com/Patreon. And or by shopping our Amazon affiliate links. Just click any of the Amazon banners before your next shopping trip, and it helps out the show. With that, let's get into the main topic. Glock 42 problems, version 2.0. Is there a version 2.0? And gun store biases. All right, well, welcome back to the main topic, and we're here actually with listener Mike Walsh of actually Illinois, fellow Illinoisan here, and Mike wrote me a week ago or so, and talk a little bit about the Glock 42, but also kind of the some of the perceptions or misconceptions that he got from several people talking to them at gun stores and stuff. So, hey, Mike, how you doing?
Good. The interesting things are the responses that I got from the gun shop owners, what Glock had told them, and just a general feeling of some of the people about information you can get on the internet.
Seriously, I think you really bring up a good topic here about kind of the attitude you can get from fanboys or gun store guys and stuff like that. So this kind of starts off on your journey, maybe seeking out the Glock 42. So tell me a little bit, what you outlined in the email to me, a little bit about what happened.
Well, I've had a 10/22 and shotguns, things like that for 30 years, but I just recently, started concentrating on pistols, and I bought a Glock 19, joined a local range, and was taking the wife there. The Glock 19 was a little much for her, and I started thinking about a 380. Primarily when I subscribed to the larger channels, and the guys that would previously said they would never consider owning a 380 or certainly carrying one, after shooting the Glock, they were rave reviews. So
you're referring to some of the larger YouTube channels, right?
Yeah, Hickok 45, and those guys. So I started looking into it, and then I started to see the problems cropping up. Well, I know from experience that if you go look for a review on vacuum cleaners online, the guys with the loudest voices are the guys that are mad at the product. So you're going to get a skewed. But when the guys that you subscribe to, when half of them are having problems, now you're not getting a skewed picture of it anymore. You're getting about 50% of the people that are having problems. And they were having failure to feed, stovepipes, things like that. So then I got a little, worried about it. And then I came across the article that I sent you on loose rounds, where the guy identified the problems and he documented the new parts that were put into the Glocks. So now my problem was, well, how am I going to walk into a gun store and ask the guy to see his Glock 42, ask him, can I take it apart, and then tell him that he's got the wrong one?
Right.
So I made a point of waiting until there was nobody else in the store in case the guy behind me might be shopping for a Glock 42, and I'd start the conversation saying I went to one. I got two gun stores within a 5-mile radius of my house, so I went to the first one. Actually, the guy where I bought the Glock 19, and I says, "You got a Glock 42?" "Yeah, I got one." So I said, "Can I see it?" And he showed it to me, and I said, "Would you mind if I take the slide off?" I probably should ask you at this point, were you aware of these changes that Glock made? You personally?
We may have talked about it on This Week in Guns at some point. I really can't remember. There's a lot of guns that there's either a recall or some changes. Yeah, I mean, no, really off the top of my head, no, I didn't. And the looserounds.com article is really pretty in-depth, and he's got really good side-by-side photos. And there's some obvious changes to several of the parts. And I'm guessing you ask them to take the slide off because one of the notable changes is if you're looking down into the grip frame, I'm guessing, is what this one picture is. There's a 1 marked on the new frame.
Very tiny little line of letters and numbers that ends in a 1. And unfortunately, that's the only change that you can see, readily see. Anyway, the first guy I went to, he was kind of nervous. He doesn't like people to, dry fire his pistols or rack the slides or anything. He's afraid you're going to scratch it. And so I said, "Would you mind if I take the slide off?" And he said, "Well, if you're going to buy it, you can."
So what kind of gun store was this? Was this a
just
chain?
Like mom and pop.
Mom and pop, okay.
And finally, I convinced him I'd be careful enough, and I lifted the slide off, and there was no number 1. So he said, "What are you looking for?" And I said, "I'm looking for a number 1. And, "Well, is there a number 1? And I says, "No." And at that point, he said, "Whatever." And he spun on his heel and started to walk away. And then he realized he was in his store, I think, and he came back. And said, "Well, I don't know what to tell you." And I could tell he was angry with me. I said thanks and left. Now, and I'm watching online, and there's 5 different guys complaining about the different malfunctions, and they have 5 different solutions. They're sanding down parts, and with a couple of guys that got their Dremels out. And I'm thinking, why don't these guys know? Why is this not front page news? I mean, this is like, the new Chevy's brakes are going out. Why isn't everybody making a big deal of this? So I went to a second gun shop, and this guy I thought I was going to get punched in the face. I asked him, did he have a Glock 42? "Yes, I do, Brought it over. I says, and I'm tippy-toeing, I says, "Have you heard anything about changes Glock has made?" "Glock changes?" "No, Glock didn't make any changes." I said, "Well, yeah, actually they did. I tried to explain. Where'd you hear that? He's cutting me off, and I said, "Well, I heard it on the internet." You can't listen to anything on the internet, especially those forums. It's all a bunch of blood. Glock is never going to let a dealer be in a position to be ambushed, which I thought was kind of a weird choice of words. Ambushed by a customer. We're the first to know if there's any problems. And I said, "But this is documented. I watched the videos. I've watched videos of the stovepipes. You can't. No, you can't. He was really getting upset. Who told you? Who exactly told you this? Well, I didn't want to use the word blog because I knew that would just tear the blanket with this guy. And I said, "Well, he's a gun writer. He's an established gun writer. It's not just some idiot on the internet. Impossible. I'm going to call Glock. They'll tell me. And I said, "Well, all right. Please let me know what Glock has to say about it." So I left, and about 4 days later, I was at the range, and it just so happened there was a Glock. The Glock League was meeting there, and he was the gunsmith that worked at the store that I had talked to previously, was working in the line.
So the Glock rep?
No, the gun shop owner that I had just talked to 3 days earlier that said, everybody on the internet was idiots, and that he was going to call Glock. And he came up and he shook my hand. He says, "You remember me? I was talking to you about the Glock." He said, "Yeah." He said, "You were right." But then he adds, "Well, you were half right." I talked to Glock, and they have an extractor on there that they did make some subtle changes in the extractor for some minor problems, but that was it. And I said, well, and I started to say something. He said, I got to go, and he ran off. So I got to thinking about it, and I'm thinking, now this guy's carrying this gun. And what was really disturbing was, as I'm watching more and more videos of the problems, the majority of the problems is with carry ammo. You know, the range ammo, the ball ammo, a lot of the guns it would cycle fine, but as soon as they loaded critical defense or PDX-1 or Hickok 45, his gun wouldn't run Barnes Tech XPD. And I'm thinking, well, maybe the guy had a change of heart. I'll print the article and bring it into his shop. So I did. I printed the pictures up that you see on loose rounds, you know.
Yeah.
And I stopped into the shop, and he went off on me again. You know, he evidently he thought I was stopping by just to rub it in, you know. When in reality, I wanted to say, you know, I appreciate that you know took a look, but here's the pictures, you know. But I didn't get that far. He went off on me. So I handed the sheets to his partner, who throughout the previous conversation was just kind of standing in the background listening. And I said, you might want to take a look at this and take it or leave it. But what I was hoping to get from you or from some of your buddies is I don't quite understand where the FFL get their guns. I mean, is it unreasonable for a guy like me to ask them if they can get me a gun that was manufactured on a specific date or later, or did they all get their guns from different distributors, or did they go directly?
Yeah, there's quite a few different distributors, especially for Glock. There's probably at least 10 different distributors they can probably get Glocks from, and it just probably depends on. You know, it's probably like at the grocery store aisle, for first in, first out kind of stocking. So, you know, once they get through the ones that, you know, were the older models, then you start to see the newer models come on the market. But, you know, it also depends a lot, you know, on the gun stores. I'm sure, you know, these little smaller gun stores may not move that many guns, so they may have ordered in quite a few of the Glock 42s, and they may have quite a back stock of them, you know, locally there too. So, and especially since, you know, it's not really public knowledge, like you say, I can see that being a big problem, trying to nail down and find essentially a version 2.0 Glock 42.
Well, the thing is, since that loose rounds article came out, the last change that was made was the stamp on the frame. And if you read the article, the guy says, I can't see any differences when I hold the two frames together. Well, I'm thinking maybe they marked the frame with a 1 to indicate to their gunsmith when it comes in that it has all of the new parts in it. I mean, who knows? But I'm assuming that if you can find a gun with the 1 on the frame, that you're getting one of the last changes. Now, if you know, so you would assume that they would make the other changes.
You know what? Yeah, I found it really interesting that they mark a 1 on the frame, and let's see here. What's the guy's name? Duncan at looserounds.com does as well, because he's never seen a number marked in any of the Glocks in that location on the frame. And there's also a little update here that says some of the new frames coming out since June of 2014 are being marked with a 2.
Number 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Platt Dickens, you know, so.
Right. So, I mean, from the consumer end, you know, it seems like Glock's trying to keep this hush-hush as far as the changes. Now, this isn't really anything new with Glock. They've made some changes like this on other models in past years. And, you know, Zach Carlson that started the show with me a couple of years ago, he was my original co-host. He works for Lone Wolf Distributors. And so since they make, you know, pretty much any Glock aftermarket part, they kind of have to know these changes. So, you know, from what you're telling me and from this article, it's really not a surprise because, you know, Glock's been making subtle changes without announcing them throughout the years, and you know, a company like Lone Wolf, you know, it's unfortunate for them because they kind of just have to figure this out. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they have to figure out if they're making a part to interface with this part. If Glock changed that part, you know, what do they do now? Do they have to go back to the drawing board and stuff like that. So I really can see this being a problem for not only the consumer but also aftermarket parts makers. Which Glock is notorious for not liking any aftermarket part maker. So they don't want anyone making things that they make. So there's no surprise that they wouldn't be telling people about the changes. I think, but yeah, it's difficult. So did you ever find one, Mike?
No. It was funny when you mentioned the other changes. When I was talking to the second gun shop owner, I said, well, I mean, he basically said what you just said. I mean, I've seen Glock make changes before. I mean, you look at with the Gen 4 9, with the 19, they changed the spring. And he said, well, now, wait a minute. He says, they did change the spring, but the spring they changed to was just better. Now, take a couple minutes thinking about that statement. What does that mean?
It's more perfect.
What does that mean to him?
More perfect. Right. Well, and it's also really interesting that they changed the magazines here. You know what? We should probably go through some of the changes here they made to the Glock 42. I want to go back real quick. When you asked me if I was aware of all this and stuff, and I said we might have talked about it on This Week in Guns, and we didn't talk about any of these problems. I went back and looked, and we talked about an article on the Firearm blog from back in February. There was some rumblings out there that the Glock 42 was having barrel problems, actually, and it was I don't know, somehow damaged. It was very unclear. I never saw any follow up to this. But anyways, so let's get into like the current changes on the Glock 42. So the magazines are the first thing that surprised me the most. That the new magazines have been changed slightly. Have a slightly different, I guess, contour to the outside housing of the magazine. Is what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, oddly enough, though, there was some in one of the threads on one of the posts. Guys were arguing over which magazine actually is the later version. One guy was claiming he had a gun that he knew to be a later gun that had the picture on the loose rounds is listed as the earlier. But who knows?
Interesting. Well, and that's something you never know either. Dealing with a gun store, maybe they, had these guns out of the new box. They had a few open, and the magazines got shuffled around, and then what? But yeah, a slightly different contour, and apparently they're thinking there's 3 revisions of the magazines. Mm-hmm. Is what I'm seeing, and we hear about manufacturers changing like the followers. You hear about that once in a while, but to actually change the outside, of the magazine itself is kind of interesting. That seems something pretty basic.
Well, the first problems, or the majority of the problems that people were reporting was the first round of the magazine. Wouldn't the gun wouldn't go in the battery.
Well, and Ryan Cross over at the Gun and Gear Review podcast, I believe he reviewed the Glock 42, and when he took it to the range, he had very limited ammo because at that time, 380 in his area was very hard to find, and I think he only got it to function right for, I don't know, 30% of the time or something.
It was bad, yeah, really bad.
Yeah, some people are having a really bad experience. You can see people on YouTube also having bad experience. So anyways, the magazine was one thing, and then the slide stop lever is another thing where that's the part where they add a 1 to the end of the, I guess, serial number on that.
It's a great big 1 marked on the actual part.
Yeah, so it has a little bit of a rounder magazine tab on the slide stop lever, I guess, and there's side-by-side photos here, and you can definitely see a difference. And then there's photos of it from the side as well. And then you go to the trigger mechanism housing, and
That's the one that's got the big one. I'm sorry.
yeah, well, they both do. This has a big one on the end of it. So it's I think it's a part number. It's 33219, and then the
-1,
new ones are -1, right? And then, yeah, like you're saying, there's a big 1 or 2 stamped on the trigger mechanism housing, and it's an extended cut lip has been added to the top right side of the trigger mechanism housing. Which
you can see the change on that if you look up.
Oh, yeah, noticeable. Very noticeable. There was a ridge on it now, whereas before it was just smooth all the way to the top, which is very, very noticeable. And then the frame stamping would be the next thing. And like you said, this article on looserounds.com, he can't tell a difference with the frame, but there is a stamp on it. So it's... it's hard to...
Probably should point out at this time, too, before I forget to tell you, I contacted Duncan and asked him the $1 million question, and he never responded,
Oh, really? How long?
It did the changes in his final gun, solve the problems, and I never heard back.
Oh, how long ago did you contact him?
A month.
Oh, well, I can't fault him for that. I'm a month behind on some of my emails. But yeah, very, very interesting article and very interesting. You'll have to get back with us, Mike, if you ever find the.
If you'll get back to me,
find the unicorn.
Talk to somebody that finds out how a guy like me can actually locate a gun that I can be sure has got the new parts, Because I'm hesitant to walk into another gun shop. Sooner or later, the law average is going to get me, and someone's going to jump over the counter.
Well, aren't there serial numbers? They go up numerically, right? So I would guess if you could figure out roughly where the serial number change fell, I
don't think so, because the one gun shop owner, when he came up to tell me that I was half right, he said, we went through our entire inventory, and all of our guns have current updated parts except for my partner. His is not. And when I was in the store, they were both telling me, I assumed by the serial number when, or one of the numbers that's on the gun, they were determining that their guns were made within the last 3 weeks. And so they were insisting that their guns had to be new, and their guns didn't have the one, so the internet was full of baloney.
Yeah. That's really the problem when the manufacturer doesn't give you any info on this.
And when they deny it, when you call them, what are you going to
do? So, who do you know that called Glock? Did you call Glock?
The second gun shop owner called them, and they admitted changing the slide lock lever.
Okay, that was the one they admitted to. And what else I find striking with your story, Mike, is how poorly you were treated at these different gun stores, and I think a lot of people listening can relate, because I've been poorly treated as well. Within the last year, I've had an incident. Yeah, so maybe it's just an Illinois thing. I don't know.
Well, I was misfortunate, and I just started really getting involved with the pistol end of shooting. Like I told you before, I was shooting my whole life, mostly rifles, but I started getting interested in pistols right when the craze was going and everybody was buying guns. And I could tell that these guys, they hate you when they look out the window, but when you're getting out of the car, they start hating you, before you even get in there, And then when you're going to bring up the internet, I was a carpenter for 30 years. I didn't ever wanted to hear what Bob Vila had to say, I would get my haunches up, So I understand these guys, they're tired.
Yeah, maybe.
But I was being really polite, really going out of my way to say, I'm a Glock guy, but,
right.
And it just go off. The only place I've seen that is in theology forum, someone with so much vitriol,
Right. It's, I guess the Glock platform is a religion to some. Well, it's kind of a sad thing about our industry is that, there's so little gun, amount of gun stores left out there. There's fewer and fewer gun stores every year, and yet, we have these gun stores that are just ran by old crotchety guys that want to sell you a 1911, maybe. I don't know. It's unfortunate. It's something that needs to change. And, but, you're right, Mike. You need to go in and just be polite, and I don't know. I guess find a different place to shop. So if anyone's listening and has any information on the Glock 42, there's a couple YouTube videos that Mike talked about here. I'll link to them in the show notes so you guys can check them out. And I'll link to this article on looserounds.com. And, and also, gun store experiences. Let me hear them. I had
you like that, huh?
I had an unfortunate one not too long ago about them not taking the trigger locks off and letting me try the trigger out, which you'll find at big box stores. They won't take the trigger locks off, but very, very interesting. Really appreciate you coming on the show, Mike, and I'll let you know if I can find an answer to your question, or if anyone's listening, how can you figure out how to get this Glock 42 version 2.0? Is there a way?
Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Mike. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, well, great interview again. Thanks, Mike, for coming on the program. Just a regular guy, retired carpenter, hardworking guy, and just really, really great talking to a listener. Duluth Trading Company. Duluth Trading Company has all the manly workwear you could ever need, such as the ballroom jeans or the big bore moccasins. That's right, the big bore moccasins, or wild boar mocks. Big bad boar, yeah. So if you need a moccasin type work boot or work ankle height shoe, they have them in men's pig suede wild boar styling. Check those out, and also check out their ballroom jeans, fire hose work jeans. Big fan personally of both of those. GunGuyRadio.com/Duluth. So Patreon, let's talk a little Patreon. I want to give a big shout out to everyone that's pledged their support, and I've had a lot of great emails also of people just saying how much they support the network and everything we do here. So I really want to give a shout out to everyone that's sent an encouraging email. And also like to encourage anyone, if you've been thinking about maybe pledging $1 an episode or something, or even $1 a month, something just real small just to show your support, please, take action now. Go to patreon.com/gun or gunguyradio.com and look for the Patreon logo, or gunguyradio.com/pledge. And it really, helps us out a ton immensely, and, will help us produce more programs, eventually help me get to a place where I'm doing, the Firearms Radio Network stuff full time instead of my dreaded day job. So I'd like to really thank everyone for showing your support. It just blows me away. Thank you so much. So again, take action. Go to patreon.com/gun or gunguyradio.com and look for the support button there on the right-hand side to support Patreon. Or through Patreon. Well, that about wraps it up. Hunter Design, hunterdesign.com. Ryan Krause does all the awesome artwork for the network. If you need any kind of logo design, anything like that, head on over to Hunter of Design, and Ryan can get you hooked up. Even if you need a full-blown website, he's your guy. hunterofdesign.com. Well, please leave. Actually, before I end the show, I want to apologize. My sound might be a little off. I have the window open and the doors open because I had an incident here with a cricket that was chirping and just wouldn't be quiet. So I had to take action, pulled the mini fridge out, and sprayed about 10 pounds of ant, roach, spider killer behind my fridge, and little kitchenette area here in the office. Off to the right, if you watch the show, it's off to my right. So I highly recommend Black Flag, 10-month extended kill, ant, roach, and spider killer. They're not a sponsor of the show, but at least they take the cricket noise out of your show. So, apologize though if a little more background noise. If you can hear, you might be able to hear the cars going by on the highway and stuff throughout this episode. So I apologize for that. So you can send your feedback by leaving a comment on the bottom of the show notes here, it's at gunguyradio.com/134. And also, leave us that iTunes review, and also please consider joining the NRA or the Second Amendment Foundation. Excuse me. They do great things for gun rights. Second Amendment Foundation keeps getting win after win in the courts, and they do things that I as an individual or you as an individual just can't do alone. So check them out. Links in the show notes. Don't forget to shop Brownells and Amazon using our affiliate banners on Gun Guy Radio or firearmsradio.tv. And also check out all the other awesome shows on the Firearms Radio Network. Subscribe and listen at firearmsradio.tv/iTunes. That's a wrap, and I'm going to go paint my shop floor. Yes, lots of fun. We'll see you next week.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv. Do you have a truck problem or maybe a Jeep problem? Is driving through the mud or climbing on top of rocks all you think about? Well, do we have the antidote for you? The Off-Road Podcast, brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network, is your source for all things off-road. Whether you're swapping axles or just mounting a winch, check out the Off-Road Podcast at offroadpodcast.com.